So, the tension is gone. Okay? Excellencies, laureates, distinguished guests, a very warm welcome to the 74th award ceremony of the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize. And thank you for your patience for the slight delay we had to start the program. My name is Iljan van Aardeveld. I'm the director of the Carnegie Foundation, the owner and manager of the Peace Palace. And I would like to extend a particularly warm welcome to the Chief of Defense, who has graciously brought the Royal Netherlands Air Force to enhance this festive afternoon. And as you entered the auditorium, you were already treated to the wonderful music of the orchestra, conducted by Major Jasper Staps. And with us, people around the world are able to enjoy the sounds and attend the ceremony because we are live streaming. As a musician, I am looking forward to the work that has been composed especially for this event, called the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize Fanfare. And you can see the program and the music on your booklet that was on your chair. For now, I wish you a very pleasant afternoon and would like to invite our president to come to the stage for his words of welcome.
Excellencies, General, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and pleasure to welcome you here in the Peace Palace for the award of the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize. Thank you for your attendance, which is also a tribute to today's laureate. A particular warm welcome to the members of the Johan Wateler family and to the members of the Dutch Armed Forces, in particular its commander, Generaal Eichelsheim. In November 1916, in the midst of the horrors of the World War, the Hague banker Johan Wateler decided in his will to use his fortune for the promotion of peace by instituting a peace prize. After his death in 1927, his estate was entrusted to the Carnegie Foundation for the execution of his will. Since 1931, the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize is awarded biennially, alternately honoring a Dutch and an international laureate. Nowadays, the prize amounts to 35,000 euros to be used for a purpose to be determined by the laureate. This year's laureate will announce in his own time his decision as to the destination of the prize. Preserving and promoting international peace takes many forms and requires the professional effort of many. Today's audience reflects it. Judges, lawyers, diplomats, representatives of both governmental and non-governmental international organizations. It also takes the efforts of personalities like Andrew Carnegie, Bertha van Suttner and Johan Wateler, but it depends on the work of millions out of the limelight. Ultimately, it requires a commitment of all of us in our private and public capacities. As the Americans say, if it's to be, it's up to me. Peace cannot be achieved in isolation. It requires international cooperation, understanding, and joint efforts. As Lodewijk Thomson once said, zoekt geen splitsing, slechts in eenheid ligt kracht. Do not seek division, strength lies in unity only. He was one of the commanders of the first Dutch peacekeeping mission in Albania in 1913. He was killed during that mission. Preserving peace demands personal sacrifice. The history of the Wateler Peace Prize and its laureates illustrate the evolution of thinking on peace building and the prevention of conflicts. The awareness of what it takes to preserve peace and to prevent war has deepened, especially our awareness of what it takes to get from war to peace. Peace is more than the absence of armed conflict, much more. It is a general feeling of well-being and security in a just society, in which one has the possibility to live his life according to his deepest convictions. Though war implies the loss of peace, peace is lost long before wars start. It's far easier to start a war than to end it. Establishing and preserving international peace has therefore many aspects and dimensions. Over the years, many of these have been put in the limelight by the award of the Wateler Peace Prize. But though our understanding of peace may have broadened and deepened, justice and the peaceful settlement of conflicts still stand at the core of what it takes to keep the peace. The Peace Palace stands as a monument of that great quest to seek peace through justice. For over a century, it houses the institutions devoted to that objective. The International Court of Justice, the Permanent Court of Arbitration that existed 125 years this year, the Peace Palace Library, and the Hague Academy of International Law. Knowledge, education, and the study of international law being equally important to achieve peace through justice. In some of its works of art, the Peace Palace is also a reminder of the horrors of war. Dulce bellum in expertis is a quote of Erasmus figuring on his statue in the garden. War is only attractive for those who haven't experienced it. If we think of justice and the peaceful settlement of international conflicts, international law and the courts quickly come to mind. But as the French mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal observed some 3.5 centuries ago, right without might is helpless. Might without right is tyrannical. Right without might is challenged, because there are always evil men about. Might without right is denounced. We must therefore combine right and might, and to that end make mighty what is right and just what is mighty. Faire ce qui est juste soit fort, ou que ce qui est fort soit juste. It's an often forgotten truth. Justice requires might and sometimes force if it's to become more than just words and an empty promise. Enforcing justice is the broad area where armed peace missions and UN peace forces take their role in the promotion of international peace. It's a role with a mixed record of success. But whatever the outcome, it takes men and women who, at the start of a mission, have the courage and are willing to move into troubled and dangerous places in order to keep warring parties apart, establishing order and security, build up civil government, and help civilians in often dire circumstances. It requires a commitment that is aptly expressed In the words of William the Silent, point n'est besoin d'espérer pour entreprendre, ni de réussir pour persévérer. One need not have hope in order to undertake, nor succeed in order to persevere. It's altogether fitting and proper if we think about establishing and preserving international peace, that we should remember these men and women and honor them. Thank you once again for coming here this afternoon in order to join us in honoring this year's laureate and to renew our dedication to the unfinished work of achieving peace through justice, to denounce that might is right and commit to making mighty what is right and just what is mighty. Faire que ce qui est juste soit fort, ou que ce qui est fort soit juste. Thank you for your attention.
We recognize that the reporting and prevailing opinions on the work of the Dutch armed forces have multiple dimensions. And we are therefore very pleased that we are able to invite two speakers who could provide insights into military deployment from a different perspective and enrich the available information. I am delighted that we are about to hear speeches of Professor Lonneke Peperkamp and Dr. Tineke Molendijk. Lonneke Peperkamp is Professor of Military Ethics and Leadership at the Netherlands Defense Academy, and Tineke Molendijk works as an Associate Professor, Social and Behavior Sciences at the same institute, and we'll see her speech on the screen. Following these two speeches, the orchestra will perform the song Brothers in Arms by the Dire Straits, arranged by Thijs van Otterlo. May I invite Professor Peperkamp to the stage.
In the world today, with rising tensions, armed conflicts, and humanitarian tragedies, I would like to ask you, what do peace and justice mean in the international order? Hugo Grotius, the Dutch father of international law, envisioned a society of states governed by the law of nations. He stated, "We have an impelling desire for society, for community, not of any and every sort, but peaceful." Peace and justice are core values in Dutch history and society. Our constitution requires the government to promote the international rule of law. The Hague is the city of peace and justice. Our armed forces are entrusted with the protection of international peace and security. And Dutch service members, some of whom are here today, have contributed to that by participating in peace missions across the world. But what do peace and justice mean? They are grand concepts, values to uphold, but which have also been violated throughout history, including our own. Ideals often invoked by the international community and by national governments as political goals to be achieved by the deployment of armed forces. So what these concepts mean in practice is experienced by these military servicemen and women. And often, peace and justice in the ideal are quite unlike peace and justice in reality. It's easy to recognize a shared responsibility, a moral duty, perhaps, of the international community to act in the face of injustice, to help others when you're able to relieve suffering, to to protect populations living under rights-violating regimes, to foster peace after war, and to support the development of just state institutions. This responsibility has been the cornerstone of international relations, underpinning the responsibility to protect and shaping peace-building efforts. It reflects the idea that the end of violence alone is insufficient. True peace requires justice. Many philosophers after Grotius have connected these principles of peace and justice. As opposed to a negative peace, which refers mainly to order, stability, to the absence of violence, it's often argued that the international community should aim for a positive peace, a situation in which people can flourish and their human rights are secured by just state institutions and a democratic government. After armed conflict, such positive peace refers to long-term stability, where root causes of conflict are resolved, where former adversaries are reconciled, where criminal justice has been served. Now, there are many of us who take peace for granted, perhaps I do as well, but the global trend is worrying. There are over 50 conflicts worldwide today, the highest number since the Second World War. And the level of peacefulness deteriorated in almost 100 states. The painful truth is that countless people are in need of protection. Members of the Dutch Armed Forces have taken on this responsibility. Together with partners, they have provided protection in conflict zones, military assistance in challenging circumstances, humanitarian aid in times of need, and stability in areas of unrest. They have dedicated themselves to protecting others, to making the world safer, and they continue doing so today in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. In fulfilling that duty, some have paid the ultimate price, while others live with lasting scars, visible or invisible. And to all those service members here today or elsewhere, I would like to say thank you for your dedication and sacrifices. They've achieved invaluable things for local populations, but in reality, peace missions cannot create perfect justice nor a positive peace. Because in our imperfect world, what peace missions can achieve is constrained by power dynamics, by competing interests, overambitious or limited mandates, personal weaknesses, by local resistance, cultural differences, and the limitations of political will and resources. It's important to recognize this gap between aspirations and reality. As guiding principles for the international order, ideals are not ideal. When they translate into political aims that do not sufficiently factor in the complex reality on the ground, they set expectations that cannot be met. In the international order, we need to balance idealism and realism. We need ambitions and reasonable expectations. We need to envision a realistic utopia. Moreover, the international rule of law is fragile. It requires our enduring commitment to uphold these shared norms, even when that comes at a cost. Does this mean that peace and justice should be redefined? Yes and no. Yes, when the ideal of a positive peace is set as a standard that proves unattainable in practice. To serve as valuable guidance for political decisions and peace missions, ideals must be tempered by the constraints inherent in global politics. For that purpose, peace with justice should be redefined as a moderate and attainable just peace. And no, because the rule-based international order that Grotius envisioned, the community, the peaceful community we desire, remains a goal worth pursuing. Even when that vision feels distant, every step towards it, whether large or small, is meaningful and worth striving for. Our servicemen and women have served and serve today to do just that. Thank you.
Some people may feel uneasy about the military receiving a peace prize. Here in the Netherlands, civilization and military intervention are often seen as fundamentally at odds with one another. Perhaps this is why when we do show appreciation for the military, we may choose to limit our praise to their peacekeeping efforts, as is the case today. I recently spoke with a young woman from Ukraine. Her name is Mila. She fled to the Netherlands and now she spends her afternoons building drones to help the soldiers fighting in Ukraine. She's incredibly grateful to these soldiers, and because of that she struggles to understand why here in the Netherlands the military is often met with such discomfort and criticism. Now, I don't bring this up to suggest that it's naive to feel tension when connecting the military to peace. Actually, I would say that it's crucial to acknowledge that while fighting for peace can be necessary, we also need to recognize just how morally complex that is. And in fact, I would argue that this moral complexity is exactly what it means to be a soldier. I brought a flag with me today. It's a UN flag, a gift I got from my friend Joseph to celebrate the completion of my PhD research. He brought it back from Mali, where it had been attached to his unit's vehicle. The mud and grease still cling to the fabric, and it now hangs in my office, serving as a reminder that peace doesn't just happen on its own. Because fighting for peace doesn't mean there's no struggle. It's quite the opposite. It means standing in the mud, facing dilemmas and getting your hands dirty, literally and sometimes also metaphorically. In philosophy, a tragic dilemma is defined as a situation where you have to choose between two awful options, where avoiding one evil means committing another. And the concept of dirty hands refers to having to make morally troubling decisions to achieve a greater good, or just to prevent greater suffering. For soldiers, these issues aren't just abstract puzzles. They are real, lived challenges with real impact. In my research, I focus on that impact. For some soldiers, their experiences leave them with a sense of pride and important memories. And for others, they result in moral injuries, in feelings of guilt, shame, and anger. These soldiers still struggle with questions like, should we have given more medical help, even though it might have fueled the conflict by favoring one group over another? Or should we have used more force to protect civilians being threatened by militias, even though it went against the rules? Did we make the right choices? Should I have acted differently? And could I? These are the challenges of peace missions. Because being on a peace mission doesn't mean you're in a peaceful area. In reality, you will find yourself in a place where there's no peace to keep, only war to witness. And that's why you're there. So, being a soldier for peace brings moral tension, and it should. It's only by facing this tension that you can adequately confront the challenges before you. Mila, the Ukrainian woman I mentioned earlier, she recommended a documentary to me called 20 Days in Mariupol. In it, a doctor says, war is like an X-ray. All human insides become visible. Good people become better, bad people become worse. It reminded me of the many stories that veterans have shared with me. And actually, this story shows that war can be morally compromising for everyone. Bad people, good people, for everyone. Take Bob's story, for example. He served as a peacekeeper in the Bosnian enclave of Srebrenica when it was attacked by Serb forces. They overtook the area and went on to kill more than 8,000 Bosnian boys and men. Bob has never been able to shake the profound guilt he carries. His hands still feel dirty. Shortly after he returned home, he ran into someone who bluntly said, "You let people die over there." That comment made him decide to keep quiet about his experiences forever. There's nothing worse you could say to him. Accusing him of just letting people die fills him with a deep anger towards civilians who have no idea what really happened. But it's also the worst thing you can say to him because deep down it's the very thought that keeps him awake at night. To this day he asks himself, did he really just let people die? At the same time, Bob knows he did the best he could. He walked countless patrols, reporting any developments they came across. And even though it was against the rules, he gave away shoes and t-shirts he bought on the black market. When Srebrenica was attacked, the Dutch soldiers withdrew, alongside thousands of refugees. They were outnumbered, just a few hundred soldiers against thousands of advancing forces. In all that chaos, Bob saw injured men and elderly people stranded by the roadside, and he did his best to drag some of them along in a cart. At one point, a young man approached him. Like Bob, he looked to be about 20 years old. He handed Bob a pack of cigarettes, and that was a precious and rare commodity in Srebrenica at that time. Bob was perplexed. Why would this young man give him this when he and his colleagues couldn't help him? When they were abandoning him? The young man told him, "If those bastards catch me, they won't have the pleasure of smoking my cigarettes." Then he waved goodbye and walked away. They never saw each other again. As a society, we ask soldiers to make difficult choices in difficult circumstances. to acknowledge and engage with the moral complexities involved in fighting for peace. We expect soldiers to get their hands dirty, and moreover, to feel the weight of those dirty hands. This in order to preserve both their own humanity and ours. That's an immense responsibility. But this responsibility isn't theirs alone. It's one we all share. We often talk about current wars as proxy wars, fought by other countries. But fundamentally, all military operations are proxy operations. They are all carried out by soldiers on behalf of society. This means that we have a collective duty to acknowledge and engage with the moral complexities and discomfort that come with reflecting honestly on what it means to fight for peace. We cannot pretend that there isn't a moral challenge in using violence in the name of peace. But at the same time, simply rejecting military violence doesn't solve the challenge either. If we try to wish away the moral dilemmas of military intervention, all we do is shift the burden onto the shoulders of individual soldiers on the ground. If we deny the dilemmas, we leave it up to them to get their hands dirty, so we can keep our own hands clean. So, I hope that awarding this Peace Prize to the armed forces can serve as a call for moral courage for us all, a call to sincerely confront the dilemma of what it means to fight for peace.
Excellencies, General, members of the armed forces, dear guests. We are here today to implement the will of Johan Wateler. I will read a translation from this will, written in The Hague in 1916. The yearly revenue in round figures will be spent for the award of a prize to him or her who, in whatever way, through word, deed or example, literature, sculpture or painting, in the country or abroad, has been most meritorious in the furthering of the peace ideal or in contributing to finding means to render the horror of war more and more impossible in the long run. Since 1931, the Carnegie Foundation has awarded this prize to a person or organization that has worked for peace in Wateler's spirit. And although the purpose of the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize, as established by Johan Wateler, is basically unchanged, it has to be viewed in the context of ever-changing times and also taken into consideration continuous challenging political and social developments. When you received the save the date for today's award ceremony, your eye may have briefly fallen on the prize's motto, translated in English, "The palms of peace are more honorable than the trophies of war." At the very first glance, this motto could seem to contradict the laureate we decided to honor today. Conflict can ideally be prevented or resolved in the courtroom through peaceful arbitration and adjudication rather than taken to the battlefield. Here at the Peace Palace, we can witness such efforts on a daily basis when looking at the work of the institutions housed at the palace. Their efforts show that international law still is a very effective instrument to peacefully avoid or settle conflicts between states. However, by granting this prize, the Carnegie Foundation wishes to emphasize another highly important aspect of peace building. There's a world of difference between, on the one hand, using military force to start a war, and on the other hand, using military force to end the conflict and restore and maintain peace. The Netherlands Armed Forces, through their 4 branches, the Royal Netherlands Army, Air Force, Navy and Marechaussee, have always played and continue to play a significant role in peacekeeping, peace building and stability in our country as well as the world at large. Long before the United Nations and UN peacekeeping missions existed, the Netherlands Armed Forces carried out their first peacekeeping missions in 1913 in Albania and 1933 for the Saarland plebiscite. This shows that more than 100 years ago, people had already recognized that peacekeeping and peace building have many dimensions. After the Second World War, the Netherlands Armed Forces have participated in more than 80 peacekeeping missions under the flags of the United Nations, NATO and the European Union. The armed forces not only provide military support, but also contribute to civilian assistance. Dutch military personnel are often involved in building infrastructure, providing medical care, supporting local communities, training troops, as well as maintaining the rule of law. Currently, Dutch forces are active in peacekeeping or enforcement operations in 12 countries, including, among others, Lithuania, Iraq, Somalia, Mali, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The jury is of course aware that not all peace missions undertaken by the Netherlands were equally successful, but that does not negate the huge efforts undertaken by the armed forces and those in its ranks. The peacekeeping missions of the Netherlands Armed Forces are highly diverse, but for many here present, perhaps somewhat abstract. Allow me therefore to provide you with some examples of the armed forces' contribution to peacekeeping missions, both past and present. One of the most notable contributions was involvement in the United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali. From 2014, the Royal Netherlands Army and the Royal Netherlands Air Force played crucial roles in this mission and contributed to international peace and security. The Army provided security, gathered intelligence, and supported local governance, whilst the Air Force offered air support with helicopters, conducted reconnaissance missions, and transport for personnel and equipment. The mission aimed to stabilize Mali, protect civilians, and support the implementation of a peace agreement between the Malian government and various armed groups. Since 2008, the Royal Netherlands Navy, including its Marine Corps, has played and is still playing a crucial role in countering piracy off the coast of Somalia as part of the European Union Naval Force Operation Atalanta. This mission aims to protect vulnerable shipping routes as well as delivering humanitarian aid to Somalia. The contribution of the Netherlands Navy has been significant, with naval vessels escorting humanitarian shipments and deterring pirate attacks. The mission has involved over 500 military personnel and resulted in the distribution of more than 1,000 tons of aid supplies. Their efforts have led to a marked decrease in pirate attacks, with the number of incidents dropping by over 50% since the start thereof. Both mentioned missions also highlight the versatility and readiness of the Netherlands Armed Forces to engage in complex and challenging operations far from home. The Netherlands Armed Forces are also heavily involved in training and capacity building initiatives. For example, in Iraq since 2018 and in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021. In Iraq, Dutch military personnel have been training local security forces to enhance their capabilities in combating terrorism and maintaining security. This effort is part of the broader international coalition to stabilize the region by deter ISIS. In Afghanistan, Dutch troops contributed to the NATO-led Resolute Support Mission, which focused on training, advising, and assisting Afghan security forces. Beyond traditional peacekeeping, the Netherlands Armed Forces have also been involved in numerous humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. For instance, in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake in Haiti in 2010, the Netherlands deployed military personnel and resources to assist in the relief efforts. Dutch troops provided essential medical care, distributed food and water, and helped rebuild critical infrastructure. These are only a few examples of the deployment of the Netherlands Armed Forces. As you can clearly see, the Netherlands Armed Forces contribute to global stability and peacekeeping in many different ways, often combining military with humanitarian efforts. Their contributions have had a profound impact on global stability, saving lives and fostering peace in some of the world's most volatile regions. The palms of peace are more honorable than the trophies of war. We know, of course, that there cannot be trophies of war, as there are only victims. There are sacrifices, suffering, and loss on all sides. Even amongst those who come with the very best intentions to help, there can be injuries, both physical and mental, as Tine Molendijk and Lonneke Peperkamp have just described. By presenting the 2024 Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize to the Netherlands Armed Forces, the Carnegie Foundation would like to honor and thank all Dutch military personnel who on a daily basis push their own boundaries to protect those of others. Members of the Netherlands Armed Forces dedicate and sometimes sacrifice their lives to preserving or building peace worldwide. I would like to invite the Chief of Defense, General Eigelsheim, and the President of the Carnegie Foundation, Mr. Donner, to join me on stage for the presentation of the award. Thank you.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for my personnel, not only the operational commands, but also the support commands that made it possible to fight for peace on several locations in the world. And I'm honored to receive the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize on behalf of the Netherlands Armed Forces. The award of this prize gives me the opportunity to showcase the many sides of our armed forces. Not just the strong muscle and the resilient mindset, but also the human heart that beats at the center of our personnel and of our armed forces in total. And as we have done earlier, if we go back in time, in 1913, the Peace Palace opened its doors. Many nations had donated outstanding works of art so that future generations could bask in the beauty of this palace. A place dedicated to peace, the most priceless gift to pass on to future generations. Tsarist Russia donated an impressive vase that weighs over 3,000 kilos. France donated a painting called The Glorification of Peace, with the goddess of peace keeping the god of war firmly subdued beneath her feet. And in the same year that the Peace Palace opened its doors, 17 Dutch servicemen set foot in the newly formed state Albania, just after the First Balkan War had ended. Their assignment was to train the recently established gendarmerie and thus contribute to restoring order and stability. This would be the Netherlands' first peace mission. Alas, the 17 Dutch peacekeepers were soon sucked into conflict. Major Lodewijk Thomson was the first Dutch soldier to be killed during a peace mission on June the 15th, 1914. But to this day, you will find Albanians who remember him as the man who fought for their freedom. And soon after his death, the First World War started, the ultimate escalation of the rising tensions between the states of Europe. The peace mission in Albania encapsulated what we would see in the missions yet to come. The military is tasked with accomplishing a political vision, arrives in a post-conflict situation, with escalation looming every day, caused by the parties already present, but also created purely by the presence of the peacekeepers. The peacekeepers who were working on the tipping point between war and peace, balancing between power and powerlessness. And yet, the civilians feel immense gratitude because you are here for them to help out. So complexity is inherent to peace missions. During the first Dutch peace mission, an officer died, as I explained. But in peace missions today, the presence of our military, of soldiers who are trained to fight, can keep fighting at bay. We use hard power to keep soft power in place. The Netherlands Armed Forces have participated in multiple peace missions, and they still do. And I'm incredibly proud of what they are accomplishing every day and have accomplished in these complex situations. You are already mentioning MINUSMA, where 6,000 of our men and women served. But there are other examples, like the cooling effect of our infantry company of Marines who achieved their mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina recently, or training the Peshmerga in Iraq. Participation in EU missions to secure the waters off the coast of Somalia, as you mentioned, but also the Netherlands School for Peace Operations, which provides training courses for international United Nations military observers and others. And I'm also proud of what our servicemen and women manage to accomplish outside of peace missions in the name of stable and a peaceful future for all of us. The Defense Explosive Ordnance Disposal Service, which is deployed about 2,500 times a year to dismantle the silent but deadly leftovers of war and criminal activities. They put themselves at risk to prevent explosions that would have affected a greater amount of people. Our gender advisor, contributing to UNIFIL in Lebanon, who is striving to get more female soldiers involved in operations. Or in Togo, 4 Dutch service members contributed to the Global Peace Operations Initiative training mission. And recently, men and women from the rural Netherlands Marseillais were sent to Ukraine to investigate alleged war crimes in close proximity to unpredictable turmoil, hybrid intrigue, and devastating violence. I also think of the many times I see servicemen and women rolling up their sleeves to help civilians in dealing with the effects of the climate crisis. Whether it's the floods in Limburg in our own country, the hurricanes in the Caribbean, the earthquake in Turkey, or the forest fires in Albania. Often, they are joined by reservists who contribute to the armed forces on a part-time basis. I would also like to mention a few other operations and missions that illustrate the diversity of our armed forces. The almost 29,000 Dutch servicemen and women who served in Afghanistan until 2021, and I was pleased to hear you mention them. But also I would like to mention the ongoing efforts of our Marines, commandos and maréchaussées as part of the Special Intervention Service, dealing with terrorist incidents and other violent public order disruptions, such as the shooting at the hospital in Rotterdam last year. Our contribution to the EU Operation Aspides, which aims to ensure freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. The 280 Dutch military personnel who are posted to a military multinational battle group in Lithuania as part of a reassurance measures to the Eastern European allies of NATO. The recurrent military escort of Russian ships when they enter our North Sea. And the ongoing training that we provide to Ukrainian military personnel. And I see how far our servicemen and women go to provide them with the best training possible, knowing that they have to go back to Ukraine to fight in a war their country never asked for. In all of these missions, operations and training activities, I see immense discipline and perseverance combined with a limitless loyalty to one's brothers and sisters in arms. I see how our men and women in uniform choose to push themselves as individuals and contribute to a greater good. This is the human heart beating at the center of the armed forces. It is the heart that starts beating louder when we are able to use our strength to help others, to use our force for good, to be extremely demanding of ourselves, becoming the toughest, strongest, and bravest version of ourselves, not for our own good, but for the protection of humanity. And that is why it can be so detrimental to soldiers when they can't be as effective as they would want. I have therefore chosen the ARQ National Psychotrauma Center as the recipient for the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize money. The center does incredible meaningful work to help those affected by war and humanitarian disasters, including refugees, journalists, ambulance workers, police, and veterans. And let me go a bit more into detail about these veterans, and Dr. Molendijk told us about the moral challenges that our men and women in uniform sometimes have to deal with. And I applaud those who find the courage to talk about their physical or mental wounds. Especially because I find it hard to do it myself. 30 years ago, I was sent to Bosnia as a helicopter pilot. And I witnessed the violence people can inflict on each other when they see the other as inhumane. To this day, it is seared into my memory, the darkest corners of humanity. And I still remember the smells, the sounds, and the sights of that war, of what happened there every day. And that is why I still try to avoid passing through Bosnia over land. I'd rather go over sea, from Italy to Greece, instead of going over land through that country. And I know that many veterans who were active in Bosnia and many other countries feel the same. Having seen war with my own eyes keeps me motivated every day to make sure that we are ready to defend ourselves. And seeing the darkness of war helped me to appreciate the light even more. Peace, freedom, democracy, the rule of law, humanity towards each other. These are elements that are also crucial to the modus operandi of the Netherlands Armed Forces. To all of us, as leaders, as teammates, always show humanity. In the way we fight, never use unnecessary force. Uphold the rules of engagement and the rules of warfare. Treat our enemy captives with humanity and respect. We will never lose sight of what we aim to protect: a free democracy, international rule of law, and the sovereignty of states. We will continue to participate in missions that seek to safeguard and to promote these values. We are the only country in the world that has enshrined the development of the international legal order in its constitution. And the Dutch are immensely proud of this peace palace, home to the United Nations International Court of Justice and the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And I know that for some it may be strange to see someone in a military uniform talk about peace. They may expect me to talk about warfighting, missiles and counter-drones, trenches and ammunition. And I do talk about that a lot, and I have to. The international law is under pressure. The sovereignty of states is being disrespected by those who wish to gain influence, inflicting violence. War is inching closer to us every day. So we need to stand ready to defend the light in which we have lived in the last 80 years. In order to keep our peace, it is up to us to prepare for war. It is our duty as servicemen and women to be able to mount a defense with the use of force if necessary, if and when diplomacy is exhausted. To be that big stick when soft words are no longer heard, and to be diplomacy's teammate when it comes to peace talks. We know all too well that peace can be fought for, but must be in the end agreed to by all parties involved. And meaningful talks can only take place when there is a balance of power. I think all Dutch civilians hope that war won't come close to us. But Dutch servicemen and women cannot only hope for the best. It is their duty to also prepare for the worst. We must be able to see and understand the darkest corners of the enemy's minds. This is the unique combination within the armed forces, within our soldiers, wanting to prevent war, but also needing to be ready to fight and to win. Our aim is deterrence, scaring off any enemies because we are well-trained, well-equipped, well-staffed, and well-aware. Because in a way we find ourselves close to 1913, basking in the beauty of peace, but also finding ourselves closer and closer to the heat of much wider war in Europe. And the armed forces will stand ready, strong and stable, in an unstable situation, willing to fight but striving for peace, because peace must not become a mere pipe dream for the next generations. Today I'm immensely proud that the Carnegie Wateler Peace Prize recognizes that unique combination within the armed forces, strength and humanity. I'm very pleased that our men and women in uniform are receiving appreciation for their hard work for many, many years, their dedication for a greater good. In the near future, they will be asked to show it more and more, every day. And I think of that painting again, the glorification of peace. Its colors are monochrome. And to me, this is a reminder that every generation has a chance to fill in the colors, to keep peace alive, to stand up against aggression and lawlessness, to make sure that the god of war is firmly held down under the feet of the goddess of peace. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for recognizing the enormous effort that my men, our men and women, do every day to ensure peace. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, General Eichelsheim, for your warm words and your touching story. And my warmest congratulations on this well-deserved honor. As we are concluding this award ceremony, I would like to invite you to join the reception in the foyer, where we can raise a glass in celebration of the laureate. And on behalf of the board of the Carnegie Foundation, I would also like to thank the orchestra of the Royal Netherlands Air Force, conducted by Major Jasper Staps. Thank you. And as you leave the auditorium, you will hear the orchestra playing once again, and this time we will hear Andrew Carnegie's Peace March, composed by Jan van Rosmalen for the opening of the Peace Palace in 1913. Thank you for attending the award ceremony, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.